Welcome to the Duck Dive, brought to you by the Olive Grove Podcast. Have you ever wondered if something that seems like a total dead end, maybe it's actually part of a much, much bigger plan, a surprising one? Well, today we're diving deep into Romans chapter 11. We're going to try and unravel this ancient but still incredibly relevant question: does Israel actually have a future? Our sources for this are some really powerful excerpts from MCS Romans chapter 11. It unpacks Paul's arguments, which can be pretty intricate with a lot of clarity. So our mission today is to pull out those core insights, about God's promises, the ones that endure, and how the destinies of Jew and Gentile are really interconnected. We want to give you a clear path through some theological ideas that, let's be honest, can sometimes feel a bit complex. And just a quick note, you'll hear us use terms like Yeshua Messiah, that's the Hebrew name for Jesus Christ, and Tanakh, which refers to the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. We'll try to keep it clear as we go.
Yeah. And what's really fascinating here is the tension Paul is addressing right away.
Yeah.
I mean, he just finished chapter 10 talking about Israel's, widespread rejection of Yeshua Messiah. So you might think, looking at that, okay, maybe Israel's future. That seems unlikely, right?
Yeah.
But Paul just immediately knocks that down. He sets up this really profound look at God's faithfulness, a faithfulness that goes way beyond human efforts. And we'll see how this all ties into a much bigger picture of grace for everyone, including you listening. Right. Paul hits that question about Israel's future head on. His answer: a resounding absolutely not, or as some translations put it, heaven forbid.
Right.
And he immediately grounds it in who he is. He says, look, I myself am a son of Israel from the seed of Abraham, tribe of Benjamin. And that instantly introduces this foundational concept, doesn't it? This idea of a remnant. Oh, absolutely. This principle of God's remnant. It's just so central, so enduring in his whole plan. You trace it right back to Noah, Genesis 6. God preserved a faithful few then, and it continues all through the Tanakh, the Old Testament. God always preserving a portion for himself. We even see it again demonstrated way later in the book of Revelation. It's this constant theme, God ensuring he has a preserved group for his purposes.
And Paul doesn't just state it like as a principle. He gives this really powerful historical example from the Tanakh, Elijah, 1 Kings 19. Elijah felt completely alone, right? Crying out to God, Adonai, Lord, they've killed your prophets, torn down your altars. I'm the only one left, and now they want to kill me too.
Oh.
Can you imagine feeling that isolated, that desperate?
Yeah, it's intense. But God's response is what's so, surprising and powerful. He tells Elijah, I have kept for myself 7,000 men who have not knelt down to Baal. Baal being this ancient pagan idol. Now think about that. That was a huge reminder for the Jews in Paul's time, who often felt persecuted, isolated. They weren't alone either. And, it can be an encouragement for you today. You might not be quite as alone in your faith journey as you sometimes feel.
That's a really powerful truth. So Paul connects that history, Elijah's story, directly to his own time, the present age. And he emphasizes that this remnant, this group God preserves, is chosen by grace. He's really clear. It's not by legalistic works. Grace is a gift. It's the total opposite of works, where, a person expects wages, something they deserve. Okay, so now let's turn to something that honestly can feel a bit harsh when you first read it. Our source talks about how most of Israel, even though they were striving, trying hard to please God with their own efforts, they didn't actually reach their goal. And Paul quotes the Tanakh, specifically David, saying, God has given them a spirit of dullness, eyes that do not see and ears that do not hear. When I first read that, wow, a spirit of dullness. For someone listening who might be wrestling with their own faith, how do we understand a loving God allowing that? What's the deeper purpose Paul's getting at here?
That's a really important question. And it's crucial to see it from Paul's perspective within the bigger picture he's painting. You see, while that remnant we talked about, they understood grace, but most didn't. And this brings up a question for us too, doesn't it? If we tell everyone about grace, why doesn't everyone just get it instantly? Well, the text here points to a kind of divine reality. God must soften the heart, open the eyes, and allow the people to hear. It really speaks to the sovereign work of the Father in revealing himself. It's not just about human understanding alone.
Okay, so Paul then anticipates the next logical question, or maybe assumption. He asks rhetorically, in that case, isn't it that they have stumbled so badly that they've permanently fallen away? Like, is this it for them? And his answer, again, is that strong, emphatic, by no means. Heaven forbid.
Right. And here's where God's plan starts to look really, ingenious, almost counterintuitive. Their stumbling, Paul says, wasn't meant to be a permanent fall. It was actually a means for something else, deliverance to the Gentiles. And specifically, it was in order to provoke them, Israel, to jealousy. What's just striking here is God's intricate design. He uses one group's temporary rejection, their stumbling, to bring blessing to another group the Gentiles. But the ultimate goal, the long game, is to bring that first group back into the fold. It really shows his redemptive heart, his patience.
So the immediate effect was pretty clear then. Gentiles, like us non-Jewish believers, were blessed because of Israel's temporary rejection. It literally opened the door for our salvation. That's incredible when you think about it.
Absolutely. And if you connect this to the larger story, it perfectly explains Paul's own life's work, his ministry. He saw himself as an emissary sent specifically to the Gentiles, but part of his motivation, his strategy even, was that his very work among Gentiles would provoke his own people, the Jews, to jealousy. He hoped through that to save some of them. And you actually see the same kind of dynamic mirrored way later in Revelation 11 with the two witnesses. Their powerful display of God's might seems intended in part to arouse the Jewish people to envy, to see what they're missing, and ultimately to repent.
We've seen how God uses these, surprising ways to achieve his purposes. And speaking of impact and blessing others, we wanted to take just a quick moment to tell you about Enduring Freedom Ministries, or EFM. Their goal is really simple, but so powerful. For just $4 a month, that's it, $4, they can provide a hot meal, groceries, clothing, even a haircut and laundry services for one person in need. It's a tangible way to show the love of Yeshua Messiah. If you feel led to give, maybe consider helping them reach people. You can also learn more about the amazing things God is doing through EFM in their book, Misfits for Jesus, True Accounts of People Experiencing Jesus. It's available on Amazon, and every purchase supports their work. And hey, while you're thinking about it, be sure to subscribe to the Olive Grove podcast on YouTube so you don't miss any future deep dives like this one. Okay, so let's get back to Romans 11, specifically verses 17 to 24. Paul uses this incredibly powerful analogy, the olive tree. He describes how some natural branches representing Jewish people were broken off, and then you, a wild olive, representing us Gentiles, were grafted in among them.
Yeah, and this picture, this olive tree, really drives home a crucial point. As Gentiles, Paul says, we have become equal sharers in the rich root of the olive tree. We get nourished by that ancient root. But, and this is a big but, Paul warns us directly, don't boast as if you were better than the branches. He says, remember, the root supports you. You do not support the root. It really raises an important question about humility in our faith, doesn't it? Understanding where our spiritual life actually comes from. We're connected to something much older, much deeper.
It's so easy to fall into that trap, that kind of spiritual pride. The source material then addresses that very argument someone might make. Well, branches were broken off so that I might be grafted in. Like, it was all for me. And Paul's response is pretty blunt. True, that happened, but so what? That doesn't make you superior. He says they were broken off because of their lack of trust, their unbelief, and you keep your place only because of your trust, your faith. It's such a vital reminder that our standing isn't because we're inherently better, it's solely by faith.
Exactly, and this leads right into a really sobering warning. Paul says, don't be arrogant. On the contrary, be terrified. Why terrified? For if God did not spare the natural branches, he certainly won't spare you if you abandon faith. This highlights both sides of God's character, his kindness, absolutely, but also his severity, his justice. So it's not about being proud of what we've achieved or our status. It's about staying focused on what Yeshua has done for us. Our salvation is entirely about faith in him.
But right there, within that serious warning, there's also this profound hope. Paul continues, moreover, the others, the natural branches, if they do not persist in their lack of trust, will be grafted in. Why? Because God is able to graft them back in. What's really striking here is the clarity about the Father's desire, his will. He wants all Jewish people to come to believe in Yeshua Messiah and be spiritually rich. That's what the thriving olive tree symbolizes, the spiritually connected, flourishing people of God. Paul then moves to reveal something he calls a mystery, a truth that God had formerly concealed but has now revealed. This is big. He states that stoniness, to a degree, has come upon Israel, like a partial hardening, until the Gentile world enters in its fullness, until the full number of Gentiles comes to faith, and that it is in this way that all Israel will be saved. Wow, that's a profound statement about the future.
It really is. And this directly confronts and refutes an idea that unfortunately became common later, the idea that the church has replaced Israel. Paul explicitly warns against that kind of thinking, calling it out as coming from pride and arrogance. This rejection by many Jews, this hardening, Paul insists, is temporary, just temporary. He even quotes the prophet Isaiah to back it up. Out of Zion will come the Redeemer. He will turn away ungodliness from Jacob. That's a future promise. This really connects everything back to God's unwavering long-term redemptive plan for his chosen people, Israel.
And Paul reinforces this, doesn't he? He states very clearly that God's free gifts and his calling are irrevocable. They can't be taken back. Why? For the sake of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God made promises to them, and he keeps his promises. That commitment stands firm forever.
Yes, and that should bring immense comfort to you listening to, especially if you're a Gentile believer in Yeshua. It means your salvation, founded on God's promise and gift in Christ, is also irrevocable. If we connect this back to that big picture Paul's been painting, God has orchestrated this incredible plan. Gentile disobedience, in a way, led to God showing them mercy through Christ. And now, Israel's temporary disobedience will ultimately also lead to them receiving mercy. It culminates in this amazing declaration. God has shut up all mankind together in disobedience in order that he might show mercy to all. The ultimate truth. Nobody, Jew or Gentile, deserves a right relationship with God based on their own merits. Only Yeshua Messiah does. It's all about his mercy.
So what does this all really mean for us today as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into Romans 11? Wow, we've seen just a stunning display of God's profound wisdom, his incredible patience, his intricate planning. It's clearly not about human effort figuring it all out or making it happen. It's about divine orchestration, God weaving together the destinies of Jew and Gentile through Yeshua Messiah.
Absolutely. This chapter, this deep dive, it just reveals the incredible depth of God's riches, his wisdom, his knowledge. Paul himself just bursts into worship at the end of this section, doesn't he? Reminding himself and us that God is sovereign, he knows everything, he owns everything because, well, he created everything. His ways are so far beyond ours.
And for you listening today, this exploration offers, I think, a powerful reminder of God's unchanging faithfulness. His promises hold, and the incredible scope of his mercy. It reaches farther than we can imagine. It's definitely a call to humility for all of us as believers, recognizing our place isn't earned, it's purely a gift. And it provides such a profound hope for the future, knowing God is patiently, strategically working out his purposes.
Which really raises, I think, an important question for each of us to maybe reflect on. What does it really mean for me, for you, to truly embrace this divine story, to really understand that our own individual stories, our lives, are actually part of a much, much grander, divinely appointed purpose that God is unfolding?
Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.